Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Ola Tamanova, and I'm happy to see everybody here in Ukraine Media Center, Ukrinform. It's been 10 years of the war, and today is day 460 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by the Russian aggressor. And I traditionally want to thank the representatives of all the mass media who tell the world the truth about our heroic resistance. Our brief schedule for today is as follows. At 12:30, joining us online will be Mykola Lukashuk, head of Dnipropetrovsk Regional Council. We will talk about the situation in Dnipropetrovsk region. Joining us at 1 o'clock, joining us online will be Yuri Ignat, spokesperson of the Air Force Command of Armed Forces of Ukraine. We'll talk about the night strike, the strike that was inflicted by Russians today on a number of the regions of our country. And joining us right now is Viktor Yelenskyi, head of the State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience. Good afternoon, Mr. Viktor. Good afternoon. We know that on the 24th there was a meeting of the Council of the Ukrainian Church where they considered the issue of switching to a new church calendar. Can you please give us a couple of comments about this transition? How long is it about to take? To what extent do we understand it will be accepted inside, how it's perceived inside of the church? Well, such a resolution was approved by the council. That's a historic decision because every church, every religious community, every Christian religious community, they decided for themselves, what it means to be a Christian, and to much extent when they answer this question they are facing a problem, they're facing, so to say, a challenge. Whether I am a Christian inside the temple or I think as a Christian, I live as a Christian beyond the church fence. Does the time pass for me inside the temple and outside the temple in the same way? Do I use the same language inside and outside? And it's again very serious philosophical and religious question. And Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, they answer this question in such a way that a Christian should remain a Christian under any circumstances. They cannot be a Christian only inside the temple and confess something different outside, some different values. So is the first challenge of this transition to a new calendar. The second challenge and the reason is that we know that the Julian calendar is not quite precise. It accumulates delay compared to the astronomical calendar, and now this delay is 13 days. In some time it will be 14 days. In 128 years there will be another day added. So it's completely natural to have the church serve with the most precise calendar. Then another essential question is the presence of two calendars. It used to create, so to say, a duplicity, and a Christian, an average Christian, was facing some tortures of conscience when they had to fast during the Day of Independence of Ukraine and the New Year that they celebrated traditionally. They had to break the Christmas fast. Obviously, for a lot of people today, specifically for those who adhere more to the traditional side, to the procedural side, the side of life beyond the temple, for them it may create maybe not if a problem, then some nostalgic sentiment that we had this or that traditions for the new year, but the transition to a new calendar, it relieves a lot of problems for the Christian conscious and consciousness, I'm sorry. And you understand now, for both Orthodox Christians and the Greek Catholics, the distancing from Russia, which until this very moment, whose church until this very moment insist on the use of the old Julian calendar, it's the matter of principle. And when they implement a new calendar in Russia, after the Bolshevik Revolution, when they implemented the Gregorian calendar, they said they do it for the sake of being with the civilized peoples. So we want to be with the civilized peoples of the earth now. Mr. Viktor, the most part of the discussions that I've seen in the public were dedicated mostly to the holiday of Pokrova, the 14th of October, when we celebrate the day of our armed forces, of our defenders. And traditionally for us, those big days, the 3 days we remember about the day of Ukrainian insurgent army, they were united in one holiday. And now we see this segregation. How should we achieve consensus, in your opinion, between everybody, among everybody? Well, consensus, it means that the holiday of Ukrainian Cossacks and the day of Ukrainian insurgent army and the day of the defenders, they are all tied to the holiday of Pokrova, and not to the 14th of October as a date, not to any other date, but to the holiday of Pokrova. And this is why this holiday will now fall on the 1st of October, and the Council of Churches, they will address the Parliament and the President of Ukraine with the request to have those two holidays which are tied to the church calendar. I'm talking about Pokrova and day of Volodymyr the Baptist of Rus, so that they are celebrated according to the new calendar. Thank you, sir. I cannot help but asking you about the events unfolding around Kiev-Pechersk Lavra. So, are there any developments in that regard? The audit is about to be over in Kiev-Pechersk Lavra. For what I know, the acting director of Lavra and the commission, they're about to finish the inspection of the facilities, the underground premises, everything that is a part of historic heritage, which is a part of UNESCO World Heritage. And after this work is finalized, there will be a way defined for management of Lavra, because it's the property of the state, and it's the state who should manage its property. And there will be also a question solved how the life of monks will continue in Lavra. Mr. Viktor, do you know whether there were any violations identified during audit? Well, the review by the Ministry of Culture, which was going on in in the end 2022, beginning 23, it was publicized. It was identified back then that there were more than 30 new buildings built in Lavra. And I want to remind you again, it's the UNESCO World Heritage Site. There were 15 fundamental buildings and 16 small architectural forms. So due to those violations, the decision was taken to terminate the agreement on free lease of the territory of the reserve. Now the work is still underway, and we're talking now about the condition of the buildings, the way to preserve them. The caves were inspected too. Is the biggest value of the cave Pechersk Lavra, and obviously the commission will publicize its opinion. Thank you, dear colleagues. If we have questions from the floor, please go on. Maria Gonchar, Ukrinform, do we know what is the number of communities who switched to Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and how active is this process for the time being? Within April, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine was added by more than 80 communities who switched from Moscow Patriarchate. So at least this is the number of reports that we were getting about the meetings where the adherents decided to change their submission, and there was more than 50 reports of such meetings in May. Obviously not all of the statutes of the communities were updated, because it's a process that takes some time. If it's not to be called lengthy, still it takes certain time. So the process is underway, and in my opinion it's not going on in an avalanche-like manner, but it's quite dynamic. Then another questions, in your opinion, is it a lot of communities that are not ready to switch to the new calendar and they will still adhere to the old one? Well, you see all the transitions in all the churches, in Greek Church, Irish Church, everything that is related to the switch to the new calendar in Romania and Bulgaria, for example, too. All those processes were accompanied by such rifts, and you know the influence of the old churches who do not recognize the new calendars. They exist, and it was very well weighed decision by the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, who allowed the monk communities and the religious communities, monasteries, convents, which are not yet ready to switch to the new calendar, not to do that. Not to do that right away. And they got some time for that transition, and I know that the top level officials of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, they take it quite easily when a monk community or another religious community doesn't switch to a new calendar, just in the same way as they were taking it easy when in Berlin there was an experiment, if we can call it so, when communities of the whole section were celebrating Christmas on the 25th of December. Mr. Viktor, thank you. And the last question then, in your opinion, how long will it take for us to finalize this transition, to make it gradual and to take into account all the necessities of the community? So how long will it take? Well, we know that the church is it's an institution that relies upon the traditions, and traditions weigh a lot here. If people within 50 or 60 years were perceiving the liturgy only in church Old Slavic language. It's difficult for them to switch to Ukrainian, for example, and in some communities, one liturgy per week remains in the Old Slavic language. In the same way, it happens in the West. After the Second Vatican Council, they switched to the Western languages, and under the rule of Pope Benedict, one Mass was allowed to be served in Latin. And in the same way it happens here. This transition takes time, and maybe some change of generation even, but according to my experience, the higher religious consciousness the people have, more of evangelical fundamental they have, the more prompt is this transition. Thank you very much for this broadcast. Thank you for this information. I'm reminding you, joining us was Viktor Yelenskyi, the head of the State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience. Our next briefing will be at 12:30. We will talk about the situation in Dnipropetrovsk region, so stay tuned. Thanks to our armed forces, and glory to Ukraine.